Ever wondered why so many ancient stories about the beginning of everything kind of sound familiar? I mean, we often just dismiss creation myths as failed science, right? But what if there's something else entirely? What if they are the actual foundational blueprints that cultures use to build their whole reality? Well, today, we're diving right into that. It is the ultimate question, isn't it? It's a question that has been echoing through our collective consciousness for, well, forever. Long before we had telescopes or particle accelerators, we had to look for answers in the world around us and, the world inside us. And look, these myths aren't just simple campfire stories. No way. They are these incredibly complex, symbolic structures. Their job is to orient an entire community in the cosmos, to establish what's real, what's sacred, and really how to live. So, let's start by decoding how these powerful stories actually get the job done. To really get what these stories are doing, we can't just read them literally. That's missing the point. Thankfully, scholars have given us a set of tools, kind of like lenses, to see the deeper machinery at work here, showing us how these myths function for the people who created them.
So, on one side, you've got thinkers like Mircea Eliade. He saw myth as this ultimate act of making the world real by connecting everything to the sacred, to the time of creation. But then you have Claude Lévi-Strauss, who argued that myths are more like a language, a logical tool our brains use to work through huge fundamental opposites, like life versus death, or raw nature versus organized culture.
The great mythologist Joseph Campbell really gave us a fantastic framework for this. He argued that any myth that lasts has to do 4 essential jobs. So, first up, the mystical function. That's to fill us with a sense of awe. Then there's the cosmological, to give us a basic map of the universe. Third, the sociological, which is huge. It validates the social order. And finally, the pedagogical function, which is all about guiding us as individuals through the stages of our lives.
Okay, so if these myths are so important, you'd think there'd be an infinite number of them, right? A different one for every single culture. Well, this is where it gets really fascinating. Scholars have found that despite thousands of cultures all over the globe, most creation stories are actually built from just a handful of recurring architectural patterns.
And here they are. These are the 5 big ones. You've got creation from nothing, creation from chaos, the earth diver pattern, emergence, and the world parents. Each one is like a unique window into how a culture sees existence itself. Let's break them down.
First, ex nihilo, from nothing. This is the idea of a creator so powerful that reality is just an expression of their will. Think of the god of Genesis literally speaking the world into being, or the Egyptian god Ptah creating just by thinking and speaking.
Now, the second blueprint is totally different. Here, the stuff of the universe already exists, but it's just this formless, chaotic soup. The creator isn't a manufacturer, they're an organizer. Their job is to bring order and structure to this pre-existing mess. You see this vision a lot in cultures that had to deal with powerful, unpredictable forces of nature, like the ocean.
The earth diver myth. This is a beautiful, very specific pattern you find a lot in Native American traditions. It always starts with a world that is nothing but water. A creator sends an animal, maybe a little muskrat or a duck, on this heroic dive to the very bottom to bring back just a tiny piece of mud. And that speck of mud magically grows to become the land we live on.
The emergence myth sees creation as a journey. Here, the first people travel up through a series of underworlds, kind of evolving and changing until they finally emerge onto the surface of this world. It's an incredibly powerful metaphor for birth and growth, with the earth itself as a literal womb.
And finally, the world parents. This one's often the most dramatic. Creation happens either through the separation of 2 deities who are stuck together, like an Earth Mother and Sky Father being pushed apart to make room for life, or it happens through the violent dismemberment of a primordial giant whose body parts become the world.
So, we have these blueprints. But what about the specific building materials? Well, the answer, so often, is the world right outside your window. A culture's own landscape provides the actual vocabulary for its creation story.
Just look at this comparison. It's perfect. In Egypt, life depends on the gentle, predictable flooding of the Nile River. So, of course, their creation myth begins with a primeval mound rising peacefully out of a calm, watery chaos. Now contrast that with the Norse world, born in a violent, volcanic landscape. Their creation begins in a void between a realm of fire and a realm of ice. It's the clash of these extremes that sparks life into being.
And that Norse story is just a textbook illustration of that violent world parent blueprint. After the gods kill the giant Ymir, they literally build the world from his corpse. I mean, look at this table. His flesh becomes the earth, his blood becomes the oceans and rivers, his bones become the mountains, and his skull becomes the vault of the sky.
It's this incredibly stark vision of order being violently carved out of a living thing. These stories also did real political work. The Babylonian epic, the Enuma Elish, tells how the god Marduk defeated a giant sea monster and created the world. But here's the thing. By reciting this story every single year, the Babylonians weren't just telling a fun tale. They were ritually reaffirming that Marduk, and therefore the city of Babylon, was dominant over all other cities and all other gods. It was statecraft.
In the Mayan Popol Vuh, creation is all about trial and error. The gods try making humans out of mud, but they just fall apart. So they try wood, but those people are heartless and don't respect the gods. Finally, they get it right with maize. Now, this isn't just a story about getting it right on the third try. It elevates maize, their staple food, to the actual sacred substance of human life itself.
Now, for a complete mind-bender. The Australian Aboriginal dreaming isn't a story about something that happened a long time ago. It's an ongoing reality. They call it the everywhen. The creative acts of the ancestors didn't just happen once and then they were done. No, they are continuously happening, right now, embedded in the landscape itself, in the rivers and rocks that are still alive with that creative power today.
So, it's really easy to look at all this and think, okay, that's ancient history, but the truth is, we haven't stopped doing this. We are still building our world on foundational stories. We just give them different names now, because at our core, we are still myth-making creatures.
I mean, think about it. The whole narrative of the Enlightenment, of reason triumphing over the darkness of superstition, that's a powerful modern myth. When indigenous groups use their ancient stories to fight for land rights, they are using myth for its original sociological purpose. And even the whole debate over intelligent design, you can see it as a clash between two competing creation stories, just playing out in a modern arena.
And that really gets to the absolute heart of it. The power of a creation myth was never about whether it was scientifically accurate. Its power is in its ability to encode symbolic truths, to build a shared reality, a common identity, and a framework of meaning for an entire people.
Which of course leaves us with one final big question. If these stories are the invisible architecture of a society, what are the load-bearing walls of our own? What are the foundational myths we live by today? Myths of progress, of the individual, of the nation, that shape how we see the world, often without us even realizing it.